Jordan, I'm kind of in the dark here in my room.
I
So I
know.
feel very like jazzy, relaxed right now.
Ooh, yeah. Like we need some elevator music happening. I
I think
also am
where
dark
people's elevator
because
music.
you what?
I think where people's elevator music, where the background noise.
We are, yes. I am also dark because I changed my tone to match elevator music.
Yeah,
Also dark because my tripod for my light broke earlier today. So this is how we're going to be. Just a little dark, just a little mellow. Probably not that mellow once we start talking about soccer.
yeah. A lot to talk about. We've got
Yeah.
not only has the U.S. women's national team played 2 games against Brazil since our last show, but in the meantime, they basically announced that the Women's World Cup's coming back to the United States and they expanded the Women's Olympic Tournament, all happening in the U.S. as well in LA in 2028. So we have a lot to talk about on that side of things. And then NWSL back around the corner. I missed it this weekend. I will say Friday night was like the most glaring because we had the U.S. Women's National Team game on Saturday and then on Sundays. I don't know. You have the week scaries anyway, so it's like Sunday scaries, whatever. But Friday night, I was like, all right, time to get the weekend started. And I kind of sat down on the couch and was like, oh, interesting.
Wait a
There's nothing to
second.
watch.
Yeah. I am glad you had that because I needed a weekend off and I felt very happy to have a weekend off. Um, Yeah, so I am ready though to be back.
Hmm.
I'm very excited and I do think Friday I've loved the schedule over the last couple of years with NWSL how Friday really kicks it off
Yeah.
and Prime, they have a lot not that they have freedom, but they really utilize being on site well
Hmm.
because they tend to do good features and interactions. The Cooler Kids were last year, or Leanne with the band in Seattle, all those things. I feel like their
Did we
show
talk about the
gets you
Bodie sisters?
the Bodie
It was great.
sisters.
What an
It was so
interview.
great.
Bodie on
What
Bodie.
Bodie sisters unite. Yeah, and I coached them when they were little, and I texted not Meg. I texted Tess, and I was like, "This is the best thing I've seen." And their whole family was there. It was cute. So they do things like that that I feel like set the tone for the
Yeah.
weekend and kind of get you even more excited to for whatever the game is at hand.
Yeah. And we've had some very good cappers to the weekend as well on Sunday afternoon or evenings of like, okay, this is sort of the talking point right now in the league. And we've had high energy games. I think Angel City's been a good part of that, of like, they've
Yeah.
kind of played some open games that have been a little chaotic, which has been fun. And we've got another weekend of spaced out games for us to get into coming up. For the U.S. Women's National Team game, I was very excited. I went for a run. I ran to a bar. I got to the bar and I said to the bartender, it was like 10 minutes before the game started. I was like, can you throw the game on? He's like, of course. He put it on every single TV,
Love it.
full volume,
Favorite new
everything.
bar in Miami.
And it was like everyone was like, yep, now we're watching this. And then all of a sudden these women come in and they're like, yeah, they like called someone. They're like, we're watching the U.S. Women's National Team. And I was like, were you guys going to ask for this game too? Or is it like convenience of moment? So I would just like to say that I was able to create change in this bar. And now that's my U.S. Women's National Team bar because they
Yeah,
won
what's the
that game.
bar? Tell
That's
us.
the Ald Dubliner.
Okay.
It's a soccer bar in
Yeah.
Miami, in downtown Miami. So if you're in the area, you should go. I was gonna go to a different place because I went to this brewery once and they had a USL Super League game on TV, and I was like, if you've got that on, I can get
You
you to
are
put
in it.
anything on. I think it was a Fort Lauderdale game, so maybe they have a
Okay.
connection that I don't know about, which I should go find out. And so I went there, and they were closed for a private event. So I went to the All Dubliner and
Well, that's
ended
a
up
little
watching the
longer
game.
of a run than you probably planned, huh?
Um, it's like midday in Miami, so anything past one block is. I keep being like, oh, I'll go for a run later. Like it's
Yeah.
still spring, and I run in the shade a lot, and I'm like, oh, I'll be in the shade, and it's like, oh, that's not what that feels like. It feels like a microwave all around you. But in the end, the U.S. did win. So maybe it's my new tradition. On that first game, they beat Brazil 2-0 at SoFi Stadium. Awesome crowd, by the way. I know there was a little bit of worry of like, it's a huge stadium, pricing, whatever it is. It was really fun, I think, especially from afar to like watch the engagement and the experience. Early goal for Trinity Rodman. Great to see. Trin back, the celebration is absurd. Like with a back injury, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And then, of course, they go on to win 2-0. And then you get into the second game, which was late last night. And you end up with a 2-1 Brazil victory. So a split across the two games, massively different lineups as well. Only 4 players carried over from the starting lineup in the first game to the starting lineup in the second game. It was the center back pairing of Emily Sonnet and Tara Mikion. It was Katarina Macario up top, and it was Alyssa Thompson along the wing or in the attacking positions, whatever it was. A huge changeover for a team that's already, to some extent, pulling out of their A team to the B and C level groups that we have available because of injuries to Triple Espresso, injuries to the Rose Lavelles of the world, Tiana Davidson, Naomi Girma, and whatnot. So the U.S. ends up losing. I guess my first question to you is, how big of a deal is that? And what do you make of the decision of how the U.S. women's national team staff handled the roster, but most importantly, the lineups across the two games?
I'm going to say this again. I think I said it with the games earlier in the year. I wasn't really concerned about the U.S. winning both of these games. I kind of prefer them to lose in these scenarios to be able to have something to say, hey, this is where we have to get better. A loss really highlights those things, Goss. And I wasn't opposed. Like, I'm not mad about the loss or upset about the loss. I think the changes in the roster from Saturday to Tuesday, I have questions. One, I actually think you could have done most of the changes if you kept one more piece in the middle of midfield. I think well, I'm not going to take Claire Hutton out because I thought she was so good in this game. In comparison to how the game was, I think if you have Lindsay Heaps in the middle of midfield instead of a Lily Johannes, or actually keep Lily and take Corbin Albert out. If you have a Lindsay Heaps there, then you have Emily Sonnet as a center back, Heaps as a midfielder, and Macario as the center forward. And that's your spine. It felt like there needed times in this game. Like, I was tired from watching the game. Were you tired?
I texted you very early, and I was like, this is chaos.
There was, like, not only... I don't know if it was the early goal, if it was the energy of the crowd at PayPal Park in San Jose, but the combination of, like, how the crowd was reacting to everything and a bunch of players who had never played together on the field, it was, like... It was making me feel like this weird energy of... It was really chaotic. It really was. But I think because you make so many changes, and maybe this is what Emma Hayes was looking for, is in the midst of that chaos, does anybody calm the game down? Does anybody make a difference? Does anybody change the feeling in a game when the ball is at their feet? And I actually felt like there was a couple of players who did that. And I think there was a couple of players who didn't. And I think there was a couple of players that were like, are they going to be able to do this? But I think it was a test in a way, saying, here's all these new players who really have no relationship with each other. Figure out a way to solve some situations in the middle of a game.
Yeah, I think that's like a very interesting way to go about it, is like, if we throw everyone in the deep end, we'll learn who can swim, and some people won't swim and some people will. I often, as someone who believes in giving young players opportunity across the sport, I do believe in having guardrails to help them get there. And like, I rail about this a lot because I do a lot of coverage around like MLS Next Pro and lower division stuff. And there are teams that will throw a U7 team out there against the pro team and get smoked. That doesn't help young players.
Right.
This, of course, is not that, because you are talking about players who are... Lily Johannes is the heart of a Champions League team in Europe. Alyssa Thompson is the best player on her team in NWSL. You're not talking about players in that scenario. But I do think if you can make it slightly easier and also realistic, like, you want to put players in situations they're going to be in. What's fascinating about all of this is you had game one against Brazil and you knew exactly how Brazil was going to play, which is we're going to spread the game out. We're going to turn everything into an island. We're going to go 1v1 everywhere. And like that, I think as I watched the game was like, oh, okay, if you do this against the full national team, like it would have been fine, right? You have a lot of players in that group who would have been ecstatic. If Trini Rodman and Mal Swanson healthy are like, oh, we're going to do everything 1v1, there's space.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Bring it on.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then you look at this game and like Tara McKeown is chasing into space and dealing with 1v1 battles. And I think you had Lily Johannes more isolated than she wanted to be able to link up with players. And so it's interesting to have watched the first game, knew it was going to happen, and then choose to do it for the second game. But I think this is all the license that Emma Hayes got by winning a gold medal. Like she can actively say sort of what you said, which is like, I don't really care if we lose. And like, it's acceptable for this because I can take my risks. And when else are you going to do it? And so I think it's good to see that Emma was happy to do it in this and not just say like Ireland at home is where we're going to do it, but like Brazil is where you're going to do it. But I would agree with you that you could have added a little bit more composure, even if it was just, why not start Emily Fox in this game and not the first game? And just have a little bit, rather than two fullbacks who have no experience doing this, you have one.
I thought Patterson was all right, though.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah,
but that was
better
also
than Thompson, which shocked me.
Yeah, which is because of Thompson's performance in the previous game, where she was very, very good. So yeah, it was a fascinating experience, I think, to watch it play out. And it was like, I mean, especially after the first goal, you're like, this is the whole game. It's just going to be these one-on-one battles. And everything was like half turn. If you turn the right way, you're out. And if you don't, or if the other team turns you, it's a goal.
And I think Brazil created a lot of problems for the U.S. because they were playing really out of a 3-4-3, right? And so it was three players centrally on the back line, and so that's why McKeown was challenged, right? Because she couldn't let the player run into midfield alone because the midfielders already had players that they were trying to take care of, and there were questions. Giselle Thompson was getting pulled to the fullback, and then it's truly a 3v3. I thought the times where the U.S. looked most comfortable were the times where Claire Hutton was in a free role and able to shadow the back line and maybe not prevent the pass in, which she's so good at, but double teaming with Caroline or Gio or whoever was receiving the ball on that back line of just holding the player up and allowing the midfield to double back and help. But then there was another question, like it's 3v3 up front for the U.S., right? It was three players high. And are you going to ask Michelle Cooper to come back and do all that work? Or do you want those players to stay high and say, okay, we'll deal with whatever is coming at us as long as we know we have a 3v3 going the other way, which made the game super stretched. And I think that's how Brazil wanted the game played in those individual 1v1 battles. But I do think not a lot of players have ever played against what for the majority of the game was a man-on-man defense from Brazil. Like, you don't play against that. Like, the only really one time I've seen it is in MLS when Almeida was the coach of San Jose. And if you you don't know how to create space for somebody else by just running your mark out of the space unless you already see it. And I think that there were moments where that could have happened, and maybe a central midfielder with a little bit more experience could have guided in that. So I think that's what you're talking about. Those guardrails, how do you solve these situations? What are we asking out of our center backs? And it just felt for a lot of it, like the U.S. weren't really in control, right?
Yeah.
They were kind of like, what's going on? I gotta go with this player. I gotta step into this midfield instead of like, okay, Caroline, if you're gonna go into the midfield and receive the ball, go receive the ball. We'll just drop off.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it was compounded by the fact that right now, I think across now from She Believes Cup through to now in NWSL as well, Mandy McGlynn is really struggling, and she's struggling in her decision making. There's some struggles technically, like she's making right decisions sometimes, and she has issues technique wise of like striking the ball, hitting the pass with the right strength, all of that. But like we've seen it in NWSL. These moments where she's trying to play on the ground up the middle off a goal kick between two center forwards to a center mid's feet who can't turn in that position anyway, and then mishits it. And it's like, well, the issue is not just the miss hit, it's the decision making. Emma Hayes said this to Melissa Ortiz, who sort of brought it into her hit after halftime. Specifically, she said, like, the whole team needs to work on this. But I think that puts you behind the eight ball in possession on your build outs. And then once you got into 50-50 challenges and second balls and all of that, then you were in Brazil's game plan, which was to create that chaos and isolate the game. And so they never really were able to find their feet outside of moments where Alyssa Thompson turned and ran into space, or Michelle Cooper was able to get out into space. And then the composure in that final third wasn't fully there to take advantage. And it's a friendly, so like winning, losing is not everything. And I do think if you're going to try and teach these players this experience, there's no better place to do it. Like Brazil is not only are they the only team in the world doing this, they are most elite at winning these 50-50 duels and making the game about it. And it's one of the most fascinating things I find about the game of soccer, which is everyone associates Brazil with Joga Bonita and like all this beauty. And any person you know who's from Brazil, plays in the Brazilian league or against their national team, they're like, oh no, it's physicality. Like that's
Scrappy.
The game starts and ends there. You basically in Brazil, you have to earn the right to be a flair player after you've won all these physical battles or survived all these physical battles. And you saw it in this game.
What's their head coach? Is he Brazilian?
Elias, yeah. He coached Corinthians or Palmeiras, one of the big clubs.
And I think they've switched over the last couple of years. It feels more Brazilian. It feels that, Goss, of what you're just saying. Whereas I believe before under Pia, I don't think it had that. It didn't.
It was more possession based.
Yeah, it didn't have that. And they will possess, but when you have Yasmin coming out of the back as an outside back and what she can do, yes, she will be aggressive, but it's also layer upon layer upon layer of really good footballers. And so there's no escaping a player who can play through pressure with the ball at their feet, either on the dribble or through passing. So I think that that's a challenge as well, but they wanted it to be a battle. They made it a battle. I was impressed. I was impressed by Brazil. I feel like they're continuing to progress right now over the last year and a half. Loved them at the World Cup, excellent at the Olympics. It feels like they're on the right trajectory of continuing to get better. And yeah, you got to try these things. I think you would expect, you said there were chances missed. You would expect Alyssa Thompson, some of the breakaways she held on to the ball too much. And she can't do that because yes, she can break away from players, but players are going to catch up to her. And she doesn't have speed that is like a Barbara Banda and nobody can catch her, right? She has pace to break away and she has good timing in her runs, but she has to be clinical in those moments because I think in breakaway situations, she could have 2 more goals.
Yeah. And the pass to Trinity Rodman in the first game was what you're looking for. It was at full speed. She gets her head up, assesses the field after gets out on the half turn, a little bit of a slip from the defender, and then makes the right read at full speed. Where the opening goal in this game was she basically didn't make a decision. It gets tackled off her foot as she gets into the box, and then it gets knocked around and a little friendly fire on the goalkeeper, and all of a sudden it falls for Macario. And then that's sort of the question mark, I think, for Alyssa Thompson at this level. And I thought Emma Hayes said it really well, where she said she's one of the best 1v1 attackers in NWSL. But in the international game, teams don't allow you to attack 1v1 because they sit in more often. And it clicked for me, hearing someone who obviously is elite saying that. And I think someone in Emma Hayes that's going from club to international in this process, and I think trying to figure out for herself and her game model, how it shifts, is I think teams are more often willing, especially against the U.S., to sit in. And so you take away some of those things. And she said, we need her to become a more dangerous player in the final third.
Yeah.
That's in the final third against set defenses, but also in transition moments when you get to that final decision. And it wasn't just her. I think Katarina Macario had a chance to slide Michelle Cooper in, basically looks off the pass, doesn't really read it. And then Cooper had the chance late in the first half where she takes an unbelievable first touch to get her body in front of the defender going towards
Yes.
goal, and then takes her second touch back outside to cut her own angle. And that, if she keeps coming inside,
Yeah.
now can finish two-footed and decide whatever she wants to do. And so I think for all of them, there were these huge moments where if you make that game 2-0, the stress probably goes away. Brazil probably loses a little bit of their energy. Maybe it becomes game one again, which just becomes a lot of fouls and physicality, and there just wasn't that finishing quality at up top.
Yeah. I'm going to pivot back. I know you talked about Mandy McGlynn, but I want to go back to that. I think one of the most difficult things as you progress to different levels in the game is taking your understanding of how you play as a player and meshing and molding that to what your coach is asking of you. Because I think there are times we see it in NWSL where a team is like, well, we're supposed to play this way and it's not working and it feels like it's forced. For McGlynn right now, it feels like, can she play out of the back? Yeah, she's been playing out of the back since she started playing in NWSL. Like, that's what she's been doing. But now she has to take the request from Emma Hayes to play more out of the back with the knowledge of the players that are playing around her and the pressure that an opponent is having against her. Like, I think of that pass where she tried to play Lily Johannes, like almost at midfield, and it was a straight ball, and I think it was Angelina that steps in front and wins it and comes back. That pass is probably absolutely fine if that's Lindsay Heaps. Because Lindsay's ready for that, and she is strong enough to hold off that defender. She can take the ball under pressure. But if it's Lily Johannes, you can't play that ball right now. And instead, can you play the long ball into Macario and win the first and second? Like those things where, yes, I understand what my coach is asking of me, but this is not the right decision right now because of the circumstances X, Y, and Z. And it just feels like you're trying to fit a little bit of a square peg in a round hole, and she is capable of it, but it is, you can almost see the thought pattern happen as the ball is coming back to her, and it feels a little nervy because she just wants to do well. And so I believe she's capable of that, but it was difficult to watch some of the situations that happened playing out of the back. But I think that is not just on her, right? It's everybody trying to figure out how your game fits into a coach's style and when is the right time to play that way and when is the right time to just, okay, actually that's not what I see, and I'm gonna play what I see.
Yeah. And it's one of those things in this setup for a lot of people because we are just passing the generation of I was raised this way. A lot of players are learning this as a professional of how to build out through pure possession and to take risks and try things where you still have a generation of players that didn't do it as academy players and youth players and maybe not even in college. And so it's like you're learning it on the fly in these big moments. I believe in it. Like, I like that type of soccer. I would like to play that way. I would like teams to play that way. And I have a ton of space for, it's a mistake, but it's a mistake we'll live with. It's just, it gets tough to watch when the confidence starts to compound on it. And then it's like, my technique is off because I'm so focused on the decision and the moment. And so then it all starts to snowball on itself. And I think, to her credit, Fallon Tullis-Joyce was very good on Saturday. So the pressure's on, as it should be. Like, you're trying to fight for the first spot on the national team. But there was mistakes across the board. I think yesterday, we talked about Mickey Owen. I think Corbin Albert, it feels like from the outside now you're looking at Claire Hutton has elevated her game to the national team level. Lily Johannes has shown capability to play at the national team level. Sam Coffey's probably on the verge of being the next captain of this team over the next 5 years with the way she's playing. You have Lindsay Heaps in that position as well. And then that doesn't even go into the, like, Yasmin Ryans can play in there, and we could kind of keep going. And so I'd be surprised if Corbin Albert continues to get first choice opportunities in that group without changing performance levels. But the whole midfield was isolated. And there's this moment where Lily Johannes sort of like beats first defender and 15, 20 minutes into the game around midfield and cuts back, and second defender comes flying in on this physical tackle. And Johannes actually gets out of it, but you could see the look on her face of like, oh crap, there are players everywhere right now. And so it was a tough experience. And I think in the long run, I think we kind of started this with both of us appreciate the value that will come from this game. And
Yeah.
I won't be surprised when we hear, in a year or two from some of these young players of like, whoa, I was ready for it because I've been in this experience and I've had this opportunity, but it was a little tougher to watch, I think,
Yeah.
last night.
Do you feel like anybody had a good performance that you were like, all right, I think they did? And granted, you have to. I think this is where it's hard because if there were some more stable pieces,
Yeah.
I think those performances would have stood out a little bit. But because it was hectic, when somebody made a mistake, you're just thinking, ugh. Whereas before, you would think, oh, that was like four good things, and now
Yeah.
one mistake.
I think I think all, and now it's trying to dissect away from just last night's game.
Okay.
I Over the last 2 months, I don't know how you're not impressed by Michelle Cooper and her ceiling, but also her floor. Like there hasn't really been even this. If you want to call this her worst performance across the board between Kansas City and the U.S., she was dangerous. She was
Yeah.
a difference maker. She got them out of trouble a couple times. She came back and defended very well a couple times. I think she shapes her pressure from that wide spot when they press better than Alyssa Thompson does, of like funneling the ball where they want it to go. So I don't think it was a bad day for her. I would say her teammate as well, Claire Hutton, another one of like, wasn't a bad day, and therefore in the grand scheme of the way the game played out, probably a positive if it's not a bad
Yeah.
day in this game. And those would probably be the two that stand out. And then I think the reality now, we're going to talk a little bit about the small sample size we've seen so far this year, progressive carries, passes, all of that. Alyssa Thompson's a superstar, and it took a
Yeah.
year or so to get there. And I think anytime you see it, it's a good feeling to know like she's continuing on that path.
I thought the front three were pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're asking them to level up when we're saying you have to finish these chances, and that is the next level, right? That is them from going, okay, I'm going to start maybe some games when Triple Espresso's not out, to like I'm going to be in
Right.
one of those spots instead of them.
Rather than a super sub.
Yes. So I think it's interesting. Kat Macario at the 9. I thought her hold up play was pretty good, but I think each one of those three forwards, you could say there were some really good pieces from them. On the other side, I do think Claire Hutton, in the scenarios that she was being put in, I thought she did a good job. She gets the tackle that leads to the goal right at the beginning of the game. I liked her double team of the back line, and when she shadowed the back line, I thought there was a moment where she got played into from McGlynn and like recovered and toe poked the ball.
Yeah, that was like
Elite and so
suicidal
dangerous.
passing. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was impressed with her and her calmness, her grit. I mean, she's going to be gritty. She kind of like probably thrived in that game. And then I do think Avery Patterson was all right. Like, but I didn't feel a lot of the play for Brazil came down her side. So defensively, she wasn't super challenged. But there was a couple times when she got into the attack, and that's where she's going to thrive.
Yeah.
But she's also proved that she is not a liability in 1v1 defensive situations. So, yeah, I would say those are probably the players that stood out to me, even in the midst of like, are we all drinking Red Bull or what's going on here? You know, like that's what it felt for a second. I was like, is everybody having a Celsius?
Yeah. Game one, as I said, it was a bit more of a veteran roster. Only the 4 holdovers. So you had Emily Fox and Crystal Dunn, Lindsay Heap, Sam Coffey. So all players who have a bit more experience. So there's less question marks in what you're seeing and what you're not in that game. Setnor got the start along with Trinity Rodman. It was just good to see Trinity Rodman back. And I think it was an example of what we talked about the week before, which was I think we're all pretty confident she's going to find a way to be one of the best players in the world as she adjusts her game to no longer being I'm playing on the edge and I'm flying around and it's okay if I get knocked off my feet and flipped over and all of that. And I think to see her read the space, make the run, outside of the foot finish, play within the group, play within the team, I think that's all the steps forward of like, okay, this is Trinity Rodman with this physical capability going forward of being one of the best attacking players in the world still. And I think that was pretty exciting to see. I love Ali Setnor on this team because she can be this like individual attacking piece and just kind of like run a chicken with her head cut off if she wants to, and it's okay. But she was
Yeah.
disconnected from the rest of the team, and I think part of that was just the way Brazil played and how physical it got and how disconnected the game got, but it all still shows why she'll keep getting calls in because at worst she's one of those players you just said of like can fill in, can be a super sub. I mean, unbelievable option
Yeah.
as a super sub, but is on the cusp of breaking through into the starting conversation. And so those would be the two that popped out to me. Although I wrote down on the rundown, I thought the best American player over the course of the week in these games was Gio of Brazil, who is eligible for the U.S. women's national team, played for the U.S. U17s, grew up for a little bit, I think, in Florida after being born in Brazil, and then moving to Spain and now coming through and playing with, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, and Madrid.
Yeah.
So all across the top of La Liga. I thought she was unbelievable in that 10 for Brazil. And when you talk about like, oh, you want that flair of that Brazilian flair, but it comes with physicality. I think Gio's like an unbelievable example of that.
She was so fun to watch. I'm thinking like, what team do I want her on in NWSL? Because I want her to play in this league.
Yeah. Maybe North Carolina, and then Jaden Shaw can play center forward.
That's what I was thinking.
Also, speaking of North Carolina, Caroline, it's just awesome to see. We mentioned it last week of like, what are you looking
But it
forward
also
to
makes
in
me
these
so
games?
sad. I'm like, I want her
Yeah.
here.
But it's just, you don't know a player is going to get back there and like,
Yeah,
I
she
mean,
looks great.
To shake a defender just fully fake, facing away from goal and get to your spot, whipping crosses, finish goals. Celebration was like pretty cold as well in the corner.
Yeah.
It's why she was an MVP.
Yes, she looks like she's back to her old ways, which is really fun to see.
And it
Unless
is
she's
huge
playing against
for
the US.
Brazil. As you said, they are building up. They are hosting the World Cup in 2 years. It's going to be a huge moment. I think, as we were sort of saying, feels like the national team's on the right path. Post Marta, post Formiga, of like, what's the future of this team? There is a serious spine of really young attacking pieces. It's cool that Angelina's like a central piece of that.
Oh yeah,
And
she looked good.
and wearing the captain's armband, I think, in game one. And it's like, okay, she's got that championship pedigree now, and she's bringing that. And it felt like, I think we talked to her on this show last year at some point of what's it like to sort of like get to call up to the Brazilian national team with Marta. And it felt like she was talking like almost she was tagging along, and now she's the leader of it all. And that's really cool to see. They will be hosting the 2027 World Cup, and then they will travel to the United States 4 years later because the U.S. is going to be hosting the 2031 Women's World Cup. It was unofficially announced by the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, in I think it was a meeting of UEFA in Europe, and he said offhand that they had received one bid for the 2031 World Cup, which would be the U.S. and potentially other co-hosts, which we'll get to, and one valid bid was the phrase he went back and used about 2035 in relation to the United Kingdom bid, which has been awarded to England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland as one set of co-hosts across the United Kingdom. So the World Cup's coming back, the third time ever in the United States. I have many thoughts about all of the discrepancies in the phrases that are used here, but let's just start with how exciting this is.
Yeah, it feels.
We're talking about the growth of the game and having this tournament come back in a situation where it could be an NWSL specific stadiums for the first time ever. Whatever it is, it's going to be the biggest. I think it's going to be the biggest World Cup we've ever seen.
Yeah, it feels very like Denver NWSL announcement at first. Like it's not officially official, but the World Cup will be in the United States maybe
Yeah.
in 2031. I think that that's really excites me is the growth of the game from in the late 90s and the early 2000s to now, and how much the game has grown, the fandom has grown. To think about Kansas City hosting a game at their women's specific soccer stadium, Denver hosting a game at their specific women's soccer stadium.
Officially, an official bid is in from Denver.
Yes, it is. We'll make that officially official right here. That is just, gosh, what a cool evolution of the game. And there was talks in that conversation that the pool would be expanded even to more teams, which I actually am not a fan of. I think
Yeah.
I like the 36 teams right now and how that played out and the amount of newcomers we saw, but we also, and to see them play on a world stage was amazing, but we also saw the gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the big question is how do you make that gap smaller without inviting everybody to the biggest tournament of the in the world? But regardless if it's 36 or 48 teams, the United States is going to be the best place to have it. I think they'll probably learn a lot from the World Cup here in a couple of years from the men's side and be able to implement that to make sure that we have the best facilities, the best training sites, the they'll know things about travel that they won't before then, and so I'm just excited. I think it'll be great for this country, honestly.
Yeah, it's I mean it's massively exciting, of course, of like this festival of the sport to have what ends up being like 6 weeks of it's all anyone's talking about. As fans here, it's amazing. You can go to games, but like it I don't remember World Cups in the United States, but I've been to World Cups in other countries of you get the friendlies before, you get teams training in other markets, so you can go out and watch teams
Yeah.
train and be around it, and then the excitement and the energy plus the time zones, which is another huge part of all of this. And it will be Brazil, which will be primetime United States time zones, followed by 2031 with, we will talk
Yeah.
about in a moment, an expanded Olympics right in between. So you're putting the biggest names and the best players in lights as often as possible to then build off that, whether you're building internally in NWSL of here's a star no one's talking about, now we put them in these scenarios, now people come watch, or the flip side of like Linda Caicedo, and then
Yeah.
teams go out and get those players and try and bring them in. Or it grows competition like a Club World Cup or an International Champion Series or, you know, CONCACAF W, where it's like people are more familiar with other opponents and that elevates all of these matchups. So all of that is absolutely huge. It is going to be a ton of fun. It's also gives everyone a point to look for because I do think sometimes in these conversations of like growth of the game, we lose ourselves of like, well, now everyone's fighting for their fiefdom, and you get into multiple leagues at the same level and all of these
Right.
things. And then these are these nice opportunities for everyone to sort of rally around and be like, well, we all want to get here, which is we want to build the best, you know, program and platform for the U.S. women's national team in 2031 coming up. On the expansion side of things, I don't have a great answer. I think from a experience point of view, from a quality point of view, 32 teams is the right level.
Oh, yeah, 32. I think I said 36.
Yes, 32.
Yeah.
The question becomes, is it help a national team to get elevated to this platform and push a country to say, oh, we need to be better? Or does it hurt a program and the progress of a game in some of these other
Yeah.
places because a national team goes to a tournament and loses 6-0 or 13-0? And I don't have an answer to that. And we don't know which way it goes, unfortunate there, which way it goes and what it ends up being. I think back to two things. One is the Argentine national team, where in
Yeah.
2019 looked, you know, at times completely out of their depth and then looked a little bit better in 23. They beat Canada yesterday in a friendly, first loss under Casey Stoney. And it's like, okay, now you've elevated the team, you've elevated the opportunity, and people acknowledge that it needs to get better. But the problem is you have the flip side, which is then sometimes people give up on a team
Right.
if they don't see what they want, which is, yeah, this team's completely underfunded and has no opportunity. And so that's the results that happen. And I look at 2023 and I did a little piece before the tournament started about the Philippines. And like they were one of the teams that was running, you know, looking for dual nationals across the U.S. and the opportunity. And through two games, they only conceded 2 goals. And it was like
Yeah.
this national story. Then they lose 6-0. Does that do more good or more damage? I have no idea. The ideal situation would be for FIFA to have all the funding coming out of a World Cup properly distributed across all the national teams and create opportunity for national teams to get better and for players to have more chance to be fully professional, to get the proper medical funding, or facilities, to get all of that. Short of that, does jamming more teams into a tournament so you can pay them out for being in the tournament make the opportunity better? I don't know. I know on the men's side, they're expanding from 32 to 48 for this upcoming World Cup. I think it's going to be a bit of a failure from a competitive point of view. Like, I think 32 is the right setup. Groups of 4, it makes sense. You don't have third place teams, which makes a lot of tournaments really difficult of like, oh yeah, you advance over this team you've never played because you
Yeah.
play different opponents. And of course, there's not as big of a professional setup across the women's game. And it would be perfect if it was elevated to meet it, but this is kind of the like fake fix of like, oh no, no, we want it to be bigger. And it's like, well, you got to build grassroots first so that it's ready to be
Yeah.
bigger.
And I just struggle with it being bigger on the world stage when then you have the best of the best from the world and they end up stomping teams.
Yeah.
It's like that's people aren't going to want to watch that either.
Yep. It
That's not fun to go to a game, close game.
Yeah. It will also potentially be played in some other parts of CONCACAF. So again, the wording on this is all bizarre because it's kind of like Gianni Infantino went to a meeting and like half said this, and the US came out after and was US Soccer came out I think the next day and was like, we're so excited. The bids have not been put in yet. The deadline has not occurred, and then there has to technically be a vote next year. It will be hard to lose because you're not competing against anyone, which is sort of what the point of this was. And it's what we saw on the men's side to sort of push the next World Cup to 6 co-hosts. So then Saudi Arabia could host the following World Cup. The rumors are that Costa Rica and Jamaica are the 2 CONCACAF nations that are connected. My assumption being Canada like can't because they just hosted the World Cup in 2015. I don't know that that's true. I'm
Yeah.
just making that up. And I don't know why Mexico wouldn't be a part of it, except for if you look at the news and look at the world, maybe those 3 parties were having trouble getting to the table and agreeing on stuff. And again, this is a situation where funding will come through this to help build up facilities in Jamaica and Costa Rica. And it'll be spread out. It'll be weird, but it'll be really cool to bring that to these other parts of the world.
I mean, I wouldn't mind a couple of games in Jamaica,
Yeah,
gosh.
it's a pretty good
We
spot.
hit on our soccer-wise World Cup tour in 31. We'll go to the Jamaican games 1st. You know, hit up some
Costa Rica,
beaches.
not a bad spot either.
Yeah, I know, I know. Just a little farther. Just a little farther. And then we come back and we hit up all the U.S. places.
Are we going via boat or are we allowed to fly?
Yeah, boat.
Okay.
Swimming, probably swimming there.
And at that point, we will have seen 16 teams play in the Olympic tournament in 2028, getting ready for the 2031 Women's World Cup, which will happen here in the U.S. because it has been expanded from 12 to 16 teams on the women's side. The men's side has then been contracted from 16 to 12. So it will be a full 4 groups of 4 tournament with, I assume, the top 2 teams going through. On the women's side, it was just voted, I think, by the IOC. And this, of course, will be in LA. And I think I haven't actually seen the details on this yet, but normally one of the fun parts about soccer is one of the sports that gets spread to other sites. I think it was in Columbia, South Carolina. No, Athens, Georgia. I knew it was a college.
Yeah.
In 1996, outside of Atlanta, and then you get the finals. I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing it in the Bay Area or San Diego or whatever it is. But this is going to be really cool because we talked about the Olympics last year when it happened. It's fun. It means a ton. It is a massive opportunity. I don't think it's going away as the relevance of the World Cup gets increased. But it's such an odd tournament because you don't have enough rest time and you don't have enough games to really get into a flow.
Yeah. Hopefully, with that increased amount of teams, they'll increase the roster size because I know that is a big conversation too. But it is nice because once you get past the group stage, you're just thinking, okay, I got to do all these calculations. Is this the 3rd place team in Group A or is this the 3rd place team in Group C? And you're just like kind of confused about what's coming next. Let's just make it easy.
Yeah.
4 groups, the top 2 go on, and you're settled. I'm here for this.
And it will let some national teams have some continuity of good performance in 27. You start to get, fans on your side and all of that. Obviously, one of the tough ones is like England doesn't really qualify for the...
Right.
But we've seen momentum for England and then it goes away because they don't play in the Olympics, where for other national teams like a Spain or even a Sweden, you see like, okay, everyone's behind this team. Now 1 year later, you get to see them again in a big competition. You get an opportunity at revenge. Whatever the big storylines are, you get to see all of that play out the following year. And that's going to be really cool in context to this 4 years of soccer now we're going to have, in which you'll have 3 major tournaments across it. And all of them are going to be in our time zone and in our region. It is a lot to be excited about, and I clearly am. I'm already an Olympics nut. I'm already locked in for everything.
Oh
Now
yeah.
you add this to things. It's just going to be even better going forward. Okay, on the national team side, done. Let's move back to a little NWSL conversation. Reminder, that is still the league that we cover for the most part here at Soccer Wise, and it is returning this weekend. So on the docket, we've got one game Friday night, a full slate of games on Saturday, and then two games to close out the weekend on Sunday. We're going to talk about our top games, but before we get there, I am going to make you make some unsound financial decisions. I am going to make you either buy or sell a couple of trends early on in this year. I think most data people, front office people will tell you like you need to watch a team play 6 or 7 times before you can really trust any of the numbers. I am going to use the numbers after 3 games and say screw it. So, for
Feels
starters,
very on brand for us.
feels very on brand.
Yeah.
We're going to start team numbers overall, and then we're going to get into some individual numbers.
Okay.
So, right now, 3 games into the season, the top 3 teams in expected goals are KC Current at 8.1, Racing Louisville at 4.9, and the Orlando Pride Tide at 4.9. Those are the top 3. I am asking you, are you buying or selling each of these that they will end the year in the top 3? Then we will go to the bottom 3, which is Utah Royals at 2.3, Angel City at 2.6, and Gotham FC at 2.8.
I'm buying Kansas City.
Okay.
I think that's an easy one. That's not one that takes much thought because you stop one attacker, fine. They've got 6 more that can score goals against you.
Here was
go ahead.
one of the someone at American Soccer Analysis put out a chart of best expected assists and expected goals players across the start of the season. Temwa Shawinga is in a different universe.
Atmosphere.
Yeah, when it comes to expected goals. Number 2 is Marta tied with Dabinia. Michelle Cooper is close. Michelle Cooper is then in a different stratosphere when it comes to expected assists, and Dabinia is second on that list as well. So you could argue the 3 best attackers in both aspects are on Kansas City, and they hence are, as you said, a buy team at the top.
Yes, buy that team. I do both of the other teams, or I just pick one to sell.
I don't know. You do both.
Okay.
I could do one if you want.
I think the next one was Louisville. I will sell Louisville. I
For
think
being top 3.
for being top 3.
Okay.
I feel like that's a lot more expected goals than I thought that they were going to have. But
more than
their
you
issue
expected.
right now, what'd you say?
It's more than you expected.
Yes.
It's more expected goals than expected.
It's more expected goals than expected. I say that 5 times fast. And they will create, but their question is who is going to finish those goals. And I think that's going to be the issue for them. And I actually think Orlando is lower XG than I
Yes.
thought they were.
So one of the issues for Atlanta on this stat is they do tend to draw a lot of penalties. So they'll probably finish high on XG, but low on penalty XG, like run of play stuff. Because that gap for them is 1.6 right now. And it's not that large for any other team because Orlando tends to get a lot of PKs.
Yeah. So I would buy their stock too.
Okay.
I'm into Orlando creating a lot of chances and
Yeah.
scoring those chances.
And Orlando and KC tied right now for goals overall on 8 each. Both of them off to incredible starts. I will mimic you on all of those. I will say for Louisville, I think I wonder how much of ends of it being game states. They're a pretty good possession team, and they get behind. And so a pretty good possession team playing from behind plays into the box a lot. And you said we don't know who's going to finish it, and not all of it is like highest threat. But over the course of games, you end up with a ton of quarter chances, half chances, all that type of stuff, which this stat calculates. I don't think they'll be top 3, but I won't be shocked if they're top 5 come the end of the year. And then the hope would be, does a Balser come back at some point this year? We still don't have official confirmation on Savannah DeMillo and her status, and we're hoping for the best for her and see her back out on the field again. But I will mimic you on all of those. Then on the flip side, Utah, bottom of the pack Angel City slightly above them, and then Gotham FC, who on one goal scored, are tied for worst in the league, third worst in XG. On these three, I will start, so I don't
Okay.
make you do it again.
Okay.
I'm going to say Gotham, I don't buy being in this bottom three group. I think they will get better. Ella Stevens and Sarah Shapansky are both higher on the list so far of expected assists. I think Jesse will bring them a decent amount of attacking flair. At some point, you hope Rose Lavelle will. I think this team will settle into their identity as the year goes along. And there are half opportunities that I think are still out there that they haven't taken advantage of. And as they find who they are in those moments, and a lot of that I think is players being more aggressive in their 1v1 moments, like what we talked about with the US Brazil game. Gotham has moments where they stretch the field out wide, and players often will play east west rather than north south, or turn and be aggressive on the half turn and create chances. And so I think Gotham will be more aggressive in those moments as the season goes along, and the coaching staff can isolate of like, this is what we need from you and this is where you need to be. And Roosevelt is one of the best in the world at all of that, and I think that's going to be a huge help for them. Angel City, I'm going to sell. I don't think they'll be in this at the end either. Alyssa Thompson fed, but many reasons. And then Utah, I'm going to have to buy right now. I love everything from midfield back, but if we're talking expected goals, we're talking about the attacking front three, and it doesn't feel cohesive.
Oh, it feels like a dagger because I was so pumped about this Utah team, but they they don't have anything going on in the attacking third, do they? I think Chloe Lacasse missing her with that ACL really hurts them. Um, they are now trying to get Sentinor and St. George on the field at the same time, but it's switched to the side at which Sentinor is on, which she's more effective as the left winger. Can she play the right? Of course. Solerzano, I'm still I have question marks, but I'm with you on really all of these. I think for Utah specifically, they got to find that next level when they get into the attacking third. Otherwise, it's going to be set pieces that they score on if they can get a set piece because they have options there. Yeah, if Angel City plays like they played in that last game before the break against, I can't even remember who they played against now, Seattle. When they played against Seattle, I'm buying I think Angel City is going to look really good this year, but that was the first time we've seen them play that aggressive, that front-footed, really dictate the tempo at which the game was played. So I guess mine would be dependent on, is that the Angel City City team that we're going to see every single week? Because I think in all reality, through their time, they have underperformed every year.
Mm-hmm.
That team should not be that team should be making playoffs every year with the front office that they have, the amount of money they have, with the stadium they have, being in LA. They should be able to recruit and put a good product on the field, and we haven't seen enough from Angel City. So yeah, I think that is my tipping point. Like, is this the team they're going to be? Is this the style they're going to be? Then I'm into that, and I think they won't be in the bottom three if they do play like that.
The big thing sticking out, of course, is they don't have a full-time head coach, and we don't know who that will be, unlike what we saw with Washington last year. So what are the growing pains when that person finally gets hired? The longer that goes. So far, every week, they've gotten better. So does it follow that trend, which is like, okay, if Sam Lady's doing the job, then everyone settles in and sets a bit of a game model. You assume that's coming down from Mark Parsons, and people start to fit into that? Or is it the flip side of like it starts to get a little chaotic and uncohesive inside the locker room because you don't know what's happening and it's not really a guaranteed project? I still think they need to upgrade at the center forward position because I do think the best we've seen of Alyssa Thompson was when Sydney Leroux played at center forward.
Yeah.
And that was literally the goal they created, or Alyssa Thompson created in the Brazil game. It's a give and go. It's a 1-2 with a center forward. That center forward pulls attention from center backs, and then the space exists for Thompson to run into. If you don't have that central force at center forward and not even finishing, just helping create, you can't get the best of Thompson. And I think that's one of the things they've run into. Kenny Fuller has been awesome, but it's a lot of pressure on an
Yeah.
18-year-old
Yeah.
at that position. And I know Julie Dufour is there, and there's some options, but that's what I'm looking for. From Utah, I think the hope would be they're so good centrally that if they can get healthy at center back and get Tejada and Zornosa consistently in central midfield,
That's the
they
hope.
will at least start to dictate terms of where they play. And you go back to even the Louisville conversation of like, if you're playing in the attacking third, most of the game, the mistakes you force are ones that turn into offensive opportunities. And can you start to score goals because of that?
Yeah. No, I think those are all good points.
Let's finish off with our individual ones. So we're going to go top three in three different categories, and then we are going to buy or sell if we believe in any of them. In progressive carries, we've got Barbara Banda number one, Giselle Thompson number two, and Emma Sears number three, just ahead of Avery Patterson. Are you buying or selling any of those three ending up in the top three?
I am buying Barbara Vanda. She finds space and usually can get on the dribble and eat up 10, 20 yards. So I will say I'm keeping that. I feel like I'm selling Giselle Thompson. I
Okay.
think the way that Angel City wants to play, she will be integral, but I don't know how often she will be able to run with the ball at her feet and advance into the attack. That might be, as teams have now seen that for a few weeks, that might be mitigated a little bit more, and it's easier to stop that than it is to stop Barbara Banda. Am I
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think the Barbara Banda one is like the safest money we could probably find.
Yeah, I know.
It may even be safer than the KC leading the league in
Yeah.
in XG.
Right?
But the fullback stuff is interesting. Of like, do you clear out enough space for that player to constantly be able to take huge chunks of yards with the ball at their feet? I think one of my questions with Giselle Thompson is like, she's clearly a starter. Which side will it end up being on?
Yeah.
As the season goes along, does she get swapped back to the left? That changes the spacing because now you're playing behind your sister who likes to stay out wide. And so I think that changes it all. Emma Sears has been an interesting one just because of sort of the flash opportunity she got in the national team. Louisville needs her to be
Yeah.
aggressive. And my assumption is the directive will always be run at players, and run at players. And she probably ends up pretty close to this list. I think we would both say we would be shocked to not see a Cascarino in here when the year ends. Gia Corley, if she stays on the field, the amount that she's been playing probably as well. Let's go into progressive passes. Ryan Williams, Olivia Moultrie, and Savannah McCaskill, the top three, with Claudio Zornosa and Lil Labonta right behind. This is like a dream list of soccer players.
Yeah.
If I was building a team, I'd have these five. Jess Carter directly behind Lola Labonta and Kenza Dali, Lily Real just behind that, and Sam Coffey. We actually could build an 11. out of
Yeah,
this
there we
group,
go.
taking
We got our
away
outside backs.
goalkeepers. How do you feel about the top three of Ryan Williams, Olivia Moultrie, and Savannah McCaskill? Which one would you buy on?
I am going to buy on. Ooh, that's hard because Williams, she's going to have the ball a lot. And and so maybe my original thought was Olivia Moultrie because she is consistently one of the best final third passers. She has the most passes into the attacking third and to the attacking box, I believe. She leads or was leading that stat at one point during this very young season. So she gets on the ball and can progressive pass into really dangerous space. But because of North Carolina's possession and how much Ryan Williams gets on the ball, I think I convinced myself to just pick Ryan Williams.
I think that makes sense. And with the shape of that team,
Yeah.
it feels very clear like that space is going to be there. But I'm going to land on the Olivia Moultrie for the reasons you said of like, it's the game model, the team needs it, and it's going to be forced. And the last one I put in here was progressive passes received. So everyone on the other end. And it is probably not shockingly Alyssa Thompson, number one, Temwa Schwinga, number two, and Dabinia right now in a five-way tie for number three with Jaden Shaw, Alyssa Sanchez, Delphine Cascarino, and Emma Sears.
Ooh. I think originally you just think Temwa Schwinga, right? But I don't know. Dabinia's back.
Yeah.
I feel like we saw glimpses of Davinia last year, but she wasn't Davinia. And I feel like she's really more integral in the success of this Kansas City team, and she's popping up in the right spots. And as teams try to take away Temwa, I think I might go to Binya.
It's interesting because Bia came off the season-ending injury list, and it's like
I know, now what are they going to do?
something's going to change, and I don't know what it is. I don't know
I know.
who starts where,
Me neither.
and I don't know who finds the gaps. Because in theory, you would say Bia's back, so Debinya's sort of going to sit in and be the 10, but that's not the way they play. Bia's
Right.
going to drop in and create, and Debinya's probably going to continue to get the same chances running past her that she does with DiBernardo. Also, where is DiBernardo going to play, and where
I
is
don't
she going
know.
to start? So there's a lot of options with this team, and I think that's where it's a little bit harder to guess. But I think my safe bet would be that Temwa Shawinga ends up on this list because right now it feels like Shawinga's going to break the game, and
Yeah, I want to switch to Schwinga because of that, what you just said.
because
It's just like you don't know which players are going to play at which spots, and actually there might be games where it's not best to start Dabinia. It's best to bring her off the bench, and I don't feel like that they're ever going to be that with. It's going to be that way with Schwinga.
So as I said, there's like a big tie for third place on this one. Delphine Cascarino's in here. Savannah McCaskill was on the progressive passes list that we talked about. Gia Corley right behind on the progressive carries as well. It takes us to, I think, for both of us, the must-watch game of the weekend, which is San Diego hosting Kansas City. So San Diego went on the road to close out the start of the season before the international break at Orlando. The number one team in the league, tied with Kansas City. Now they come back to face them. I talked about how impressed I was by San Diego in that matchup against Orlando, but they didn't win. They didn't get a result. Now they come home to a team that is absolutely on fire, except for their game against the Spirit, which they did end up winning. Also, shout out to Douglas Reyes-Cerrone in the chat, who's throwing some good stuff in there, and I missed the chat before, so now I'm back to say thank you. And what's up? Because I love having you in here. You, I believe, are on the call for this game.
I am, yes.
So I say it's must watch. Explain to people why. Explain to people what they're going to get.
Is it just because? Are you saying that because of me? Is that why you said that?
Yeah, no, everyone has to watch every game during Angelique. We already know that. We're for here. Look, Soccer Wise is for Denver.
Yes, exactly. This is not about me. It's really about the way both of these teams are playing right now. Kansas City is the most dangerous team when it comes to how quickly they can impact the game and flip a game on its head. This San Diego team probably has the best structure I've seen out of any of the teams, and they give me feelings of North Carolina's possession with the grit and bite in the attacking third, where you're just like, ooh, they're actually going to score a lot of goals because of the way that they move, where I don't feel that with North Carolina right now. San Diego, I'm like on the edge of my seat, like, oh, could this soccer get any better? Are they really 1-2ing? Is that just like a combination? It's just exciting to watch them play. This is going to be a test for a back line with no Naomi Girma. And I know that we said that against Barbara Banda, but now you're talking about multiple players in this front line who can really, truly challenge this back line. I think what San Diego has done well in the way that they build, they kind of build lopsided. They use Kaylin Sheridan to play out. Their center backs are really wide, and they keep Lundqvist really low. So then it kind of invites this pressure from the front three of an opponent in order for them to find the line-breaking pass into their 2-10s, which have really been Corley and Sanchez. And then from there, it's a lot of movement. It's some really beautiful soccer. If you have not watched San Diego play yet this year, you should go watch them play because it's so nice. I'm interested.
On Saturday night at 10 p.m. Eastern time.
They will on Saturday night at 10 p.m. Eastern.
On Ion, I assume?
On Ion, yes. I am interested to see how Kansas City deals with those 2-10s because that has been difficult for teams to be able to stop. And then from there, there's such good movement with they keep possession for so long that they can get. At one point, they had 6 runners in the box.
Yeah.
6. Like, that's how good of movement they have and possession they have off the ball, and they are ready to score goals. So I think it's going to be a challenge for Kansas City defensively. Alana Cook did not have a good game with the U.S. women's team, and I think that, can she recover from that and have a good performance against a San Diego team who's going to provide a lot of different challenges
Yeah.
for that back line.
Because a huge thing for Kansas City, and we talked about it a little bit after the Washington game, is like they have shown this new club this year, which is they can be really solid defensively if they sit in. Last
Right.
year, if they sat in, it was like, we can't defend, so we're going to try and defend with numbers, and we know Shawinga can kill you in transition. This year, with Lorena and Cook playing at the level she's played, and Hutton coming in as not a rookie and having a little bit of experience, it feels like this team can be elite defensively if they want to sit in. Do they choose to do that in San Diego? That I don't know, which is why you have to want to watch this game, because I think we're going to learn a bit about Vlatko and how he feels about this team and what they want to do this year and what they can be, as well as then San Diego, how good they can be at the things they do. And the one thing I would add to everything you said is there are some teams in the world that we watch who are aggressive attacking teams, but there's not always that individual flair. And you called it grit. I think it's a combination of grit and flair, where
Yeah.
it's like the style takes over from the individuality. And so the players are going through the motions and the coach creates a pattern that's aggressive, but it's not always on the person. And San Diego has both. Like what Corley and Cascarino do and what Maria Sanchez can do and what they are allowed to do in the system and what they attempt to do is must watch by itself. And then you add in the way the team shapes themselves to take risks and open up the game. And in the Utah game at home, it was chaos. And like that is part of their game model. You add Kansas City to that. It has the potential to be like a 6-5 game, and I'm hoping that it does. And I think it's, again, for San Diego, like they've come out and been one of the surprise starts to the year, but you need to get some results combined with that to say, yeah, we can threaten in a top 4, because I think that's how good they are. Like, I think that should be the conversation,
Yeah.
but you got to get a result across these 2 games to really be able to say like, no, that's who we are. And it's not just on
Yes.
paper stuff and underlying number stuff and all of that. So I think for both of us, that's the much watched game. Friday night, Utah hosting Portland, I believe, correct? That is the prime game, the only game on Friday night. Then on Saturday, Louisville hosts Washington, Houston hosting Angel City, which is a fun one as well. And then Seattle hosting Orlando, which is not a matchup we get to see a ton out in Seattle. And then on Sunday, we close out with Gotham hosting North Carolina and Bay hosting Chicago. Chicago getting a little bit of positive injuries news, but I say a little bit because there is so much going on with them on the injury front, and it is not the big names that you are hoping to see back. And Gotham are going to continue to have to try and find ways to score goals, as is North Carolina. So that is a recipe for 2
Yeah.
teams trying to figure it out in what we would call in week 4 a must-win game already. So we've done our bad financial decisions. We've decided to buy and sell on all these teams. We are finished now. Thank you to all of you for listening. Thank you to all of you for joining us. Again, tune in to Jordan on Saturday night for that San Diego Kansas City game. And we'll be back, of course, next week with all your weekend recap action, with all of your preview action, and so much more. I'll talk to you all again very, very soon.
We are finished.